All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of Conversation on Tap. Um, it's not quite drinking hour for me yet, so I'm just drinking water at the moment.
Water.
I know.
I got coffee.
There you go. You're getting caffeinated.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get water wasted over here.
The journalism of America runs on coffee.
Oh, that's true. I drink gallons of coffee in college, but yeah, I'll have one or two cups a day.
Cool.
That's my limit. So today we're joined by Joe Payne. You're a journalist, independent journalist here in Santa Maria.
Yep.
And actually, we both know my cousin Henry Houston. How do you guys know each other?
I believe we met in music theory class at Allen Hancock College, which is also where I met my wife. But yeah, Henry was taking music theory with Dr. Marcus Engelman, basically like the musical Gandalf of Santa Maria. You know, if you ever meet
Hmm.
somebody who took his theory class, they will speak in hushed tones and Engelman, you know, with reverence and all that stuff. But I remember us hanging out in there. He's a really great guitar player, and I actually sold him a guitar of mine years and years ago. So Henry,
Oh,
that is.
wow.
Yeah, yeah.
Small world. Because I had come across your YouTube channel,
Yes.
and that's when I left a comment and I reached out to you. And shortly after that, Henry, my cousin, texted me and said, "Hey, do you know this Joe Payne guy? You should have him on your podcast."
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I actually reached out to Henry for an interview that we're going to get to eventually about the whole situation, his lawsuit against the Salem, Oregon Police Department for shooting him while he was covering, not with bullets or lethal bullets, but with these less than lethal, they call them, crowd dispersal rounds or whatever they call them. He got popped by them, even though he's identifying himself as press. So I definitely want to talk to him about that. That happened during the summer, of course, during the BLM resurgence. But
Yeah, those videos, they're on YouTube and they are hard to watch
yeah,
because he is clearly saying, "I'm a journalist." And
yeah,
you can hear in the background, they're saying, "We don't care." It,
yeah. I shared it on one of my streams because it was just ridiculous, you know. And yeah, well, I mean, we'll get to talking about all of that stuff in a bit, I'm
yeah,
sure. But yeah, the targeting of the press last summer was super concerning by law enforcement. So.
yeah, definitely. Maybe just tell us a little bit about yourself before we dive in.
Well, I grew up here in Orchid, Santa Maria. I grew up in Orchid. I lived in Santa Maria. I went to Rigetti, and going to Allen Hancock College, working on currently right now on a transfer to Cal Poly or elsewhere to get a history degree. That's why I think it's super cool. You're also a history teacher. That's kind of one of my goals as well. But I started on the school newspaper. I was super into Hunter S. Thompson at the time. If you're familiar with him, a
Love
lot
him.
a lot of dudes get into journalism by getting into Hunter S. Thompson. And I believe it was the day after he blew his own brains out that out of a sense of duty or whatever, I felt I had to do something. I joined the school newspaper and had a really great teacher there, Mr. Trumbull, John Trumbull, and he was formative. So was my video and broadcasting and filmmaking teacher, Robert Garcia. I realized years later the first journalism I ever did was in broadcast class, and then I was also on the school paper, and in my senior year I was an editor of the school paper. And while I was in high school, I got an internship at our local weekly paper, The Sun. Then it was called the Santa Maria Sun, but it's now just The Sun. And I was the calendar editor, doing the community calendar part time. And then years later, I started, while I was doing college, I started writing a music column once a week. Then I took over as the arts editor. And once I was full time, school kind of took a back seat, as I just wanted to work full time as a journalist. And I eventually worked my way up to managing editor, which I did for 2 years, until I think I did it through 2017 and 2018. And I left the paper in January of 2019. So it's now been more than 2 years. And
Yeah.
last year during the lockdown, I'd already assembled a lot of the stuff I needed, camera and microphones and whatnot, what I'm using right now. And I wanted to do my own project, do my own independent journalism thing. And then the lockdown gave me the time and that there no more excuses were needed. And I just wanted to get information out about COVID, about lots of different things. But so with my platform, I have a website, politicalpain.com. And then through YouTube and Twitch and live streaming, I kind of I do local journalism and local reporting, but I also do news of the day or national news, and it could even go into worldwide topics and foreign policy, whatever. I try not to limit myself too much, though I do. Have the things I focus on that I have, but I wanted to do this to kind of provide for my area and broader audience a kind of left progressive viewpoint that you're not going to get in this corporate media, established media, and you don't even see out here in our daily newspapers, or even the paper I used to be at, the Sun, the weekly newspaper. So that's kind of what America has a long tradition of journalists who also share commentary and opinion. They can do straight reporting, they can do a bit of both at the same time, report and then also give you their commentary while they do that, or just offer straight commentary. So I kind of fit into all those categories with what I try to provide.
Yeah, like I said, I've been watching your videos on YouTube.
Cool, thanks.
You're very knowledgeable and very personable. Great interviews.
Hey, thank you, I try.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you on today. Um,
Thanks.
so yeah, where can people find you? They can find you on YouTube at Political Pain, and where else?
And Twitch, I live stream every Friday right now at 6:30. I might tweak the time or the day, but as of right now, I
Hmm.
start on Fridays at 6:30 p.m. Pacific time on YouTube and Twitch. But I'm also on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at Political Payne. My last name's Payne, Payne. So that's where that comes from. Political Payne, Payne. And yeah, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Everybody's getting on me to get a TikTok. I don't know if I'm going to make it
Oh,
there yet, but
no.
apparently the reach is incredible. But anyway, that's where people can find me as of right now. It's where I do a lot of my stuff. So
Yeah, as a teacher, I have an Instagram for my class. Uh,
cool, cool.
I have people saying, "Do a TikTok." I'm like, "No, Instagram
Yeah,
is as cool as I get."
and you have a YouTube channel as well for your. I saw the video you did on the Capitol Hill
Oh, thank you.
attack, riot, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I did a reflection on the insurrection, the attack on the Capitol on
Yeah,
January 6th. I just had to share with my students my feelings. Uh,
interesting.
yeah, I love my job teaching history, and especially during this period of time that we're in right now, we're living history. So
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's part of what is like motivating me to pursue a history degree is the fact that when we look at American politics and the news, so many things feel like they're just discussed in a vacuum, or people we have this cultural amnesia where
yeah.
we don't remember things that happened 20 years ago. If
Hmm.
you try to talk to someone about the 2020 election and Florida and the Supreme Court, and you bring up the Brooks Brothers riot, which is when paid Republican operatives stormed the Miami-Dade County elector's office or registrar's office to stop the vote count, the recount. Kind of, not totally, I mean, quite different from what happened on January 6th, 2021. But most people that you mentioned Brooks Brothers riot, and they have no idea what you're talking about. And so that's just for 20 years ago. Then you bring in 50 years ago, 100 years ago, the founding, all of that stuff. I
Yeah.
feel context is something that historians give us that is really precious if you want to understand the moment you're living in. And journalists, it's our challenge to incorporate that, because people's attention is always fleeting. More people are going to read a 900 word story than a 9,000 words, deep dive. So you got to try to convey that in a concise way as possible.
Yeah, that's why Gore Vidal referred to us as the United States of Amnesia.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did.
Classic line. And
Yep.
so you you grew up in Orchid?
Yep.
Man, I lived in Orchid for some time, but Orchid and Santa Maria have a perception as being conservative leaning. And for
Hmm.
sure, I know I go through Orchid. I have family who live out there, and you see the Trump flags.
Hmm. Hmm.
Very much a conservative stronghold in Orchid. But what I appreciate about what you're doing is that you're really changing perceptions that people have, misperceptions or misconceptions that Santa Maria
Hmm.
is conservative. There is a growing liberal or progressive um, element in Santa Maria.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to hear that it is shifting perceptions because I grew up in Orchid and in the Santa Maria Valley, and that was just what you were told, and this is just how it is. I mean, I remember walking down the street in high school with long hair and maybe a guitar over my shoulder and having the F slur yelled at me out of a lifted truck, and all kinds of experiences like that. I protested the war when I was in high school. It didn't
Mhm.
make me a bunch of friends other than the weird hippie kids like us who would protest the war, right? And so it's not that this area isn't conservative or doesn't have a conservative strain and conservative representation in our local government. It does,
Mhm.
but we've always had what you could call liberals here, right? We've always had people on vote Democratic, but definitely now I think the Trump and the Trump years radicalized a lot of people. Obviously it radicalized plenty of people on the right. We saw the result of that on January 6th, but it also has radicalized people on the left who maybe were just comfortable being liberal Democrats, but now after learning so much about our system, learning about the issues, you know, all the different systemic problems that we are yoked with, they are more comfortable calling themselves a leftist or a progressive left on the ideological spectrum. Of course, some people go much farther than that, but here on the Central Coast, it I mean I actually looked up a few stats really quick. This is just for Santa Maria City proper, okay?
Mhm.
In 2016 we had 23,981 total votes. That's just in city limits. I wish I'd looked up Orchid now, but this is interesting. It's illustrative, right? Clinton got 13,135 votes. Trump got 9,088 votes. Now, our city council is largely Republican, right?
Mhm.
And our county supervisor is a registered Republican. And so this is, I mean, city government, they don't really run on party messages, but that just gives you an idea. That's just of the people. I mean, Santa Maria City is 110,000 people. We only have something like 30,000 registered, or actually, it's close to that. Let's talk about 2020 really quick.
Mhm.
We had 30,107 voters, so we're up, um, like more than right about 7,000 voters, right? 7,000 more people voted just in Santa Maria city limits in 2020 than in 2016, and but the numbers almost are the proportions are almost exactly the same. Biden got 16,972, just a few, a couple dozen shy of 17,000, and Trump got 12,091. So Trump voters went up about 3,000, and then Biden voters went up a little more than that. And so you see here that I think this is really illustrative of Trump and the Trump. What we saw in the 2020 election was we had massive voter turnout. Some of that may be from vote by mail. Some of that may be just because the election, because so much has been going on. Trump has obviously been this lightning rod figure for both sides to, catalyze around. And we had massive turnout. And as the numbers show us, when if you have massive turnout, the Democratic Party can eke out, not eke out. We had millions and millions of more voters on the Democratic side, but the Democratic Party, when they show up,
Mhm.
2016 I think was a matter of people in key swing states just not showing up. They're registered Democratic. They just didn't make it out to the polls.
Yeah, that's a really great point. Voter turnout matters, and when voters show up, they tend to vote blue.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, and Republicans showed up in record numbers too. this time around. No
That's
question
true.
about it.
Yeah.
But that's why I think the ground game is really important for Democrats, and we've seen some of that in Santa Maria. If we want to keep it on Santa Maria,
Hmm.
I was impressed. I covered this election. When, I believe it was the 2016 election when Gloria Soto got on the city council. Gloria Soto's progressive, young Latina, works for Planned Parenthood. Not sure I would have seen that in Santa Maria before district elections. Definitely, we kind of had at large voting where you could cast two votes, and that kind of voting largely favors incumbents and familiar faces. And that's we still have several members of the council who were benefited from that system. We got district elections, and Gloria Soto was able to unseat Moats, Dr. Moats, I believe, or am I misremembering? Anywho, it's very fascinating to see those dynamics just on the representative side in Santa
Hmm.
Maria change a bit too.
Yeah, we've had Gloria Soto on this show. She
Oh,
is
wonderful!
amazing,
I
brilliant young lady.
I got to listen to that episode.
Yeah, and I would love to have her back on again to address some of the more recent issues going on. But you're right. We've also had on Hazel Davalos.
Hmm.
She is another local organizer, and so we have these young people. That's what I love about what I'm seeing change in Santa Maria. All these young people who are getting active and involved in local
Hmm.
politics, and they're not just sitting around exchanging these grand ideas. You know, they're actually on the ground working to bring about change. And like you said, that the move to make city council members elected based on district was a huge change.
Hmm.
And yeah, the things that Hazel, for example, is doing with immigrants and housing and everything with that population, it's incredible. But we've also
Yeah.
seen young people really, I think, this last summer be galvanized by the George Floyd killing
Yeah.
and winning all the Black Lives Matter protests. Did you covered that too?
Yes, I did live coverage of it. I mean, some of it literally went. I could hear it from my house, so I just like ran outside with my phone. But really quick, Hazel and her the organization she's with, Cause, right?
Hmm.
Central Coast Alliance United for a Sustainable Economy, right? They are, yeah, they've been a long time group, serving the community in that way. But what I saw and this is the thing, having been progressive and on the left in Santa Maria for a long time, you tend to know who everybody is, and you feel pretty lonely. Or it felt that way over the years. And so when so I knew who Hazel was. Actually, funny enough, Hazel and I were like in the same class, same school since like I think kindergarten. So I've known Hazel
Oh, that's
forever. Yeah,
funny.
I've always known Hazel. So it was really cool to see her take that role and be such an advocate. But uh, I think I'm sure a lot of people in Santa Maria are excited to see. When I went out and covered the Black Lives Matter rally, I saw hundreds of people in the street. When I'm used to seeing at a protest in Santa Maria, maybe 100, right? Or dozens of people, never usually with brazen enough to block the street.
Hmm.
But that's what we saw was literally hundreds of people, four, five. I'm not the best with those kind of estimates. Maybe 600 people with signs. And I recognize several, right? I recognize several people who I knew as, these are the people you can count on to join a, left leaning march in Santa Maria, California. But then also the rest of the crowd is fleshed out with people who, they're just young people or people who maybe had never done anything like this before. I interviewed several people over 2020 who were just, I said, have you ever done anything like this before? No, never have. So that was interesting to me. And it's definitely like I said, we saw an increase in voter turnout. But the other thing is there are now more organizations. I just interviewed on my live stream last night activists with SBSLO Alliance, Santa Barbara San Luis Obispo County Alliance, and they do mutual aid. There are a bunch of groups organizing mutual aid on the Central Coast and in the Valley. Santa Maria Youth Abolitionists, these are police abolitionists, and they are feeding people, clothing people, handing out hygiene kits, and organizing this all on their own. It's autonomous grassroots. They have no leadership. It's true leftism, right? They're not nonprofit, supported. They are completely grassroots, in every sense of the word. So, seeing all of that, it's just it's a whole new ecosystem that I'm trying to make people aware of, and kind of platform these folks with with what I'm doing, so that everybody knows, yeah, Santa Maria, there's a lot going on here now.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the silver linings of the Trump administration, if you could call it that, that people are motivated. People are actually paying attention to what's going on in the world, what's happening in our nation. They're studying their history more,
Hmm.
and
The
actually,
Constitution, the amendments to the Constitution. Yeah.
what a
Yep.
concept, right? And so, yeah, you have all these young people who are like, I'm tired of waiting. I'm tired of waiting for the adults to do the right thing,
Hmm.
and they're taking action.
Yeah, I think when I'm a music teacher too. I have several music students who are kids, and I've always kind of let them, kind of tongue in cheek, let them know, like, sarcastically, like, oh yeah, you know how the adults, we totally have everything figured out,
Yeah,
like, just to like, hand them that olive branch. Like, I'm not lording over you as an adult, right? Because even when you're a younger adult, in your 20s, you still have this feeling, or I think a lot of people have the feeling that, oh well, I'm still a kid, I don't know anything about what the world is or how it works, I need to let these serious people, I need to listen to them. But when the country elects possibly the worst among us
yeah.
for the job, right, it was absolutely, it's not just a matter of qualifications, it's a matter of temperament, it's a matter of psychology, it's a matter of just just civic understanding, and like you said, historical understanding, how the Constitution works. So I think for a lot of young people it was like, oh hey,
Hmm.
adults, they're not, they're not in any more control, or they're not any better than we are. And in fact, a lot of the kids these days might be even more informed, because they live so much on the internet, right? That and even with millennials too, the numbers bear out among millennials as well, where we were very much responsible for winning Bernie Sanders the states that he won in the primary.
Hmm.
Once the numbers fell out, that's where the most of his support rests. And you go look at, there are other really interesting studies and stats that suggest that the baby boomer population and the older cohorts are more likely to be the ones sharing fake news and misinformation on Facebook and these platforms that are now barely trying to scramble to do something to quell the amount of disinformation that they've been harboring on their platforms.
Totally. Yeah, it's been a desolation. I'll put it that way. To see so many friends and family share fake news on their social media,
Yeah.
like,
Yep.
and having these insane arguments over the efficacy of wearing a mask or
Jeez. Yeah.
social distancing, and there's just no regard for facts or for science whatsoever.
Yeah.
It's been
Well,
disheartening.
I think COVID was a flashpoint, right? COVID exposed a lot of things that, I mean, if something's wrong with your house, if you have faulty
Hmm.
wiring, if there's a bunch of rot under the floorboards, and you have termites and bats living in the attic, right? If something cataclysmic happens, like you have a flood or whatever, then when the guys come in to check out your house, they're gonna, "Huh, did you know about the black mold? Did you know about the termites? Did you know?" All of that stuff comes up. And so with
Yeah.
COVID, the anti-science uh you know cohort has
Mhm.
been a has long been a part of American discourse, right? And it's not just limited to the right wing. I when I think of right wing anti-science discourse, a lot of it can be tied to kind of evangelicism and Christian nationalism. I'm talking about anti-evolution in the schools, anti-climate change, which has a lot of economic, industry corporate influences on that as well, right? But you also have in like the kind of new age world, which can totally lean left as well. You have reticence about vaccines, you have reticence about and some healthy skepticism towards things like pharmaceutical companies and the healthcare industry, but it all just gets murky and clouded with all other kinds of conspiracy theories, and we've seen conspiracy theory also flare up quite a bit under COVID, with people just having time to sit at home and go down rabbit holes, whether it's QAnon or something else, and people who you wouldn't think would fall into that type of stuff have, and like there's like a problem in the wellness and the yoga community, with QAnon belief, or mommy blogs, where they're sharing this misinformation that you're talking about.
Yeah, and actually, this is a bit of an aside, but I was stunned to hear that just even in our own local hospital here, Marion, I think it was 60% of nurses took the vaccine.
Yeah, yeah.
It, what's going on with the other 40%? I mean,
Well, I mean, there's a lot
they're
of
the frontline workers.
yeah. Well, and I think there is a certain amount, like honestly, there are a number of people who I heard who have a healthy skepticism of medical industry or the pharmaceutical industry, and I heard many people who they're not anti-vax by any degree, but what they said about the vaccine was, I'm going to let it go through a few rounds, a few 10 100 million people,
Mhm.
before I get it, because I want to just see how it all kind of pans out. There's that kind of just regular, I won't call it knee jerk, it's just kind of a regular skepticism that a lot of people have. And it's not like you don't have that within the medical community itself.
Mhm.
And nursing has always been a more, the more like uh blue collar labor force of the medical industry. And so it also, I mean, there have been several openly pro Trump nurses who have done like, made posts or gone on a Facebook Live to talk about why they're not going to take it. So there's ideological reasons for it. There's all kinds of reasons for it, really.
Yeah, that to me is a whole other interesting discussion because as we're moving through the next 100 days of the Biden administration,
Yeah.
we're looking at getting 100 vaccines, 100 people vaccinated, 100 million people vaccinated.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting.
I'm going to try to get one as soon as I can. I'm going to try to film myself getting it and talk about it and make it normal and just be like, hey guys, if an overweight guy like me with high blood pressure can get one and do just fine, I think you're going to be okay, right? So,
That's funny.
I mean, and already the majority of people who are getting it are elderly. That's
Mhm.
who it's open to we now have in Santa Barbara County and SLO County vaccination centers where you can go and get vaccinated. One of my high school teachers who I'm friends with on Facebook was like, I got my first shot today. Oh boy, so, and one of the first people to get it in Britain was like 91 years old.
Yeah,
And she was just matter of fact about it. Got to get your vaccine, and,
that's
and
funny.
it's just funny. We've been living through the hell of coronavirus, the pandemic, social distancing, staying at home, lockdown, all quarantines, all these, different things, and you have this whole cohort who just never wanted to admit it was a thing or it was as bad as anyone said, this kind of ostrich like stick your head in the sand. No, it's a contrarianism that a lot of people have, and so you have that, and now it's moved on to the vaccine. It's the one thing, it's like our golden ticket to get out of this. It's actually an
Right.
incredible breakthrough, the mRNA vaccine, which is not like a traditional vaccine. And so, we have a chance to get out of it, and they're still skeptical. Now they got to be skeptical of this, so I think it's
Yeah,
just expected at this point.
but sorry to go down that tangent there,
Hey,
but
it's all right. I think a lot of people are worried about it or thinking about it, so it doesn't hurt to talk about it.
that's absolutely true. My grandmother actually just went the other day to Hancock, and she got her first dose.
Right
So
on. Right
yeah,
on. Anything we can do to normalize it,
that's
I'm all for that.
exact
Yeah, yeah.
exactly. But talking about Santa Maria and our kind of conservative roots, if you could put
Mhm.
it that way,
Sure.
um, we still see, I, I don't know, the Trump, the MAGA crowd. They're
Mhm.
still alive and well here. And actually,
Yeah,
you
of course.
covered some of those Trump rallies, and you actually had a video that was quite popular.
Mhm.
I believe it was over on the corner of Bradley and Betaravia. You were
Yep.
at a
Yeah, so this was the Betaravia has long been like the area where Republican, demonstrators, protesters, activists, whatever you want to call them, have met. For years, they would go to the government center and protest, immigration or sanctuary laws or whatever else, basically anti-immigrant protests. Then, as COVID happened, that same the protests started moving farther down Betaravia to like the closer to Walmart along the I think it's the Toyota dealership there. And so, after COVID, they were lockdown protests and recall Gavin Newsom protests, right?
Mhm.
And you'd see it, several. I mean, it's not, nobody. It's not just a couple people out there. You'd have dozens of Trump supporters out there, and I went to one. It was one of the bigger ones, what piqued my interest was I heard there were going to be counter demonstrators there and people, voicing their side against Trump and against Trump supporters. And that was actually how I met the activists I mentioned earlier, SBS Solo Alliance. And they were out there, they're beating a drum, F Donald Trump singing, and they F that Spanish word, P word, and all
Yeah.
kinds of stuff like that. And and I was just like, wow, like I never because we have like a good conservative Republican contingent here in the area. And so it's not surprising to me that they would be out there doing that. And that's their favorite place. But I wanted to go out and see these counter demonstrators. And what I captured was a Trump supporter, another person who I don't know his name, but I recognized him from growing up in Orchid and like from junior high and, and all these other schools. And he started pushing this counter demonstrator, knocked his sign out of his hand, and then later ended up taking a swing at him. And yeah, of course, it's my this tells you the soulless evil of the algorithms on things like YouTube. That's my number one video. Like it's been viewed more than 10,000 times now, because it's a scuffle at the Trump event or whatever. And and the comments are just blown up with people, go F Donald Trump, and people going F you, and oh, they started it, and no, you could see, oh, what a b, he totally pulled that punch. And it has become, but then also the comments that interest me are the people who just like, oh my gosh, I never would have thought, this is where I'm from, I never would have thought I would see this in Santa Maria, holy cow, and here we are. So and my response was, we've been seeing this all over the country for years now. Why would Santa Maria be any more special than anywhere else? We are kind of, in a way, like, small town, every town USA, though we are growing into a bigger city. So that's what was interesting to me is like, just seeing it explode, or I don't want to overblow what the event was. It was a scuffle between these two people. The PD, nobody landed a punch. The PD showed up, SMPD, and they got it under control, and then everybody just kind of left. So but it was a thing that didn't get mentioned in any other local media or covered or anything like that. And I was just there live streaming at the time talked to some Trump people, and some of which were just like, I think Joe Biden maybe has dementia. Other ones were like pedo Joe and other stuff like that, and kind of on the QAnon route. So it's just it was a scene, that's for sure.
I'm glad you mentioned QAnon. I actually had a guest on a few months back,
Hmm.
David Lafferty, and he's an expert on conspiracies, and we chatted about QAnon a bit. Do you see a lot of QAnon activity? Do you hear the QAnon chatter from people here in Santa Maria?
Um, like not a whole lot directly, but the farther you go to the right, people have just the it's a whole ecosystem of explanations and ideas and stories or informing stories. And I was at the post office once, and a lady wasn't wearing a mask, and she was like, "Yeah, I don't believe in any of that new world order stuff," and she was just kind of like that, and
Hmm.
um I have to admit, like, as someone who kind of watchdogs like the right and right wing media, like, there's a video that a lot of people went over, which was after the January 6th. Um, Alex Jones screaming at a QAnon caller to his show, which basically, if you don't know, Alex Jones is, he doesn't want the competition, but yelling at a QAnon person like, everything you say is wrong, like it always doesn't end up being true, right?
Yeah.
And so, that is something as someone on the left to see the right implode and go to war with each other
Hmm.
and fall apart in that way is interesting. But you're always going to see people in whatever side, when they lose power, especially, kind of go to war with each other and start blaming each other. My favorite thing was a lot of Republicans in Georgia angry about all the votes the libertarian candidate got, which, someone on the left who's seen the Green Party mess up national elections and swing states, that was pretty funny. But yeah, as far as direct QAnon, I mean, I'm sure it's here. I remember as the election was happening, I mean, the one anecdote I have was a guy I've known, throughout school. um After Hillary made her basket of deplorables comment, he would and named the alt right, he was just over the moon. He felt seen, and he was like, we're finally getting the attention we deserve, and I said, and
Wow.
so I really wanted to go back and forth with him. And let me get one thing straight: I can argue. And I mean, like, you get in those situations where someone like, oh, you want to be angry and red face yelling at me? Well, okay, I guess I kind of want to do the same with you, and but we didn't get that far. But I got him into it with just enough back and forth, kind of Socratic dialogue, where I went, so you're an authoritarian then? And he's like, well, yeah, yeah. And I said, but like, why? And he said, because it gets stuff done. He didn't say stuff, because it gets
Yeah.
stuff done. And because it's good for whatever. I said, it's good for who? It's going to be good for you, right?
Hmm.
But what about everybody else? So that from the beginning, and as a journalist, hearing Trump's rhetoric towards journalists, I saw the warning signs. I saw these red flags going up. It didn't, help me professionally to talk about it or write about it, like I did from the beginning, because and that is part of this image Santa Maria has as we're still a small town, a conservative town. This city is 110,000 people just on the census, right? In the
Hmm.
city proper. You add Orchid, which is like 40, 50, 60,000 people. This valley is close to 200,000 people. It's one of the most populous areas between Ventura and Salinas. And, the idea that it's still this little small town, you know, like just an ag town, no, it's not. We have lots of different industry and beyond agriculture. Agriculture is still the king, of course, but
Hmm.
I mean, Santa Maria, and you just think of all the people who live in Santa Maria but commute to SLO or other areas, maybe in Santa Barbara, to work, and the idea of the bedroom community and all of that. It's interesting. So that's why I see, the changes in the population, the changes in the representation, and then changes in just who you see out on the street, doing politics, demonstrating. And I see that the left has grown. I may have my a little bit of my bias because I want to see that the left has grown, but that Black Lives Matter, the organic one, that there was unrest, but it was hours and hours later. I documented that as well. That was hundreds of people in the street. The Trump event, I went to that, and there were quite a number of them, maybe close to 80 or 90 or 100. But they didn't march. They sat there on the side of the road, and I recognized a lot of those folks. Some of them I knew were Lompoc Republicans who had commuted to come and spend the afternoon there. So we get it tends to happen when there's even studies about this where if you're on this side, you will tend to overestimate what's going on the other side, because when you see it, it sets off these things in your brain. You're like, there they are. But just by the numbers, what I saw over 2020, that's how I've assessed it anyway.
Hmm. Yeah, and just to kind of segue, um, we actually had a local man
Yep.
attend the insurrection of the Capitol.
Yep.
So we have people in Santa Maria and Orchid who
Yep.
are very much part of this Trump kind of, I call it a cult. It's
Cult of personality.
it's a total cult of personality. Um, I don't know if we want to say his name or not, but maybe tell us a little bit about who he is and what he captured, what he tweeted, or what he posted on social media.
Yeah, so I'm a journalist in the interest of it's all in the public record. It's all been reported out, even by the Santa Maria Times. The guy's name is Doug Doherty. He was the like president or CEO or whatever you want to call it of the Oasis Senior Center, which is a pretty big nonprofit in Orchid area. Which I don't know if they've broken ground yet on their new facility, but they're like planning to build a multi-million-dollar expansive facility. So he's the president, or was the CEO. He's since resigned.
Mm,
And he went out, he flew out, boarded a plane in the middle of a pandemic to join this, Stop the Steal rally. And what interests me is, well, I should give the full thing. So he went with this group that was promoting the event as the Jericho March.
mm,
And if you know your Old Testament biblical history, Jericho was the first city of Canaan to fall to the Israelites. The Israelites surrounded it for 7 days and marched around the walls of Jericho before it fell. Okay, and so he posted the day before with like a picture, a selfie, with him with his hood on and these sunglasses, looking solemn, and hashtag, or he said something like, tomorrow the walls are going to shake, hashtag Jericho.
mhm,
And so I say that because it's relevant that as soon as things, what happened, and it was a I mean, this is the thing, is like there is this weird knee jerk impetus that not just the right, but people across the spectrum and in the media and everything have to, throughout the Trump years, downplay every like boundary crossing, rule breaking, truly incensing thing that happens, right? It's just always, well, it's what, it's a nothing burger, you're overreacting, Trump derangement syndrome, right? It's a form of psychological manipulation, I think. And I mean, just so many things that have happened over these 4 years. But so this guy, Doherty, comes back to town, gives an interview to the Times, immediately says, well, I heard there was going to be Antifa infiltrating the movement to foment this type of thing. I just went there to pray, right? And then he appeared on the Andy Caldwell show, right? And Andy Caldwell, he's the failed candidate who ran against Salud Carbajal in our is it the 32nd House District for California. And it was just interesting, all the like barriers he tried to put between himself and this event. Like, well, I've always been unaffiliated with party. I didn't even vote for Trump in either election. I'm
Mm.
more like a libertarian. I didn't really, and I was just concerned for our country, and I went there to pray for our leadership and our country to make the right decision, because I believe that there were all these questions about the election integrity, I don't wish any will on the guy. I don't think anything bad should happen to him. I wasn't even sure that I wished him fired or anything like that.
Yeah.
But to assuage anybody worried about cancel culture, right? But it's just fascinating, the pivot that people who were involved with this event, because there's been so much coverage done now. There were literally people out in front of the Capitol, just who you would look at and be like, well, that's just your run of the mill Trump supporter, and they're saying, yeah, it's a revolution, and then there's other ones going, there's no violence here, like fake news, as Officer Sicknick is bleeding internally, right?
Mhm.
And others are, in the hospital. So, and there was a gallows hung, and the zip tie guys who had plans and communication equipment and maps of the tunnels, and apparently were corresponding with somebody who was inside the Capitol, possibly Republican representatives. And so, we're learning more and more as this all happens. But the thing that I try to get across, and I have in my coverage, is you had legit thousands and thousands of people there, and you did have a bunch of you had it ran the gamut. There were Trump supporters who saw the rally, yeah, and then maybe, I don't want to march to the Capitol. And then you had everybody who marched to the Capitol and just stood out in front of it and chanted and screamed. There were some who, even I heard some people who did reporting there, that walked away as it started getting out of hand. I didn't come for this, you know. And then you have the people who just, yeah, people broke into the Capitol, but I just want to stand up on those steps there where they're supposed to inaugurate Biden in a couple weeks. And I just want to stand there with my Trump flag. But I didn't go in, and you have every level. And then you have the people who broke glass, pushed through, beat police officers with American flags, trampled their fellow Trump supporters to death. I believe a woman carrying a "Don't Tread on Me" flag was
Oh.
trampled to death, yeah, by Trump supporters. A couple people fell off of walls. One guy apparently tasered himself to death, causing a heart
What?
attack. Yeah, so you have the bumbling, tragic goofiness of all these people who, the guy wearing the horns who was a QAnon guy himself, and it runs the gamut. But that mass of the n- not so tame to the straight up dangerous Trump supporters, they give cover to the guys who were white nationalist, neo-Nazi, neo-Confederate, paramilitary, currently or retired or had some type of military experience, who were armed, who had zip ties, who were planning to kill members of Congress. So, that tip of that spear, those people get cover from all the so-called, or I don't want to be flippant about this, but the regular Trump supporters who were there
Mhm.
to just, I just came to stop the steal, and again, we have to, like, at the heart of it, be very clear that what they were all rallying around was a lie, a massive lie about the integrity of the election, that is continually pushed by the Republican Party, continually pushed by conservative media. And, I think you saw some senators who were, it obviously got away from them and they were freaked out by that. Kelly Loeffler, who just lost in Georgia, flipped, or completely flipped a 180, like, yeah, this no, Lindsey Graham was like, that's enough for me, guys, right? So you have all these layers and levels of it. And to try to naively, or to try to play naive after the fact, which is what this local did. um you know uh this local guy who, and again, I mean, I'm sorry, but it sounds like that a CEO of a nonprofit, I know it's probably not the highest paying job in the valley, but it's a good job to have. But when I heard him on Andy Caldwell, he was trying to spin this spin it and tell the story of, well, I grew up and I didn't have, he tried to make an economic anxiety argument for his extremism, right? Like, I grew up and I didn't have the prosperity my parents had growing up in the 80s, and da, 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 da. Not making the connection of, Reaganism and Trump and union busting and deregulation and deindustrialization that we on the left are always harping on, that you need a systemic critique. And I don't know if this guy believed Joe Biden's a communist or whatever other kooky stuff they're coming up with. But yeah, so you're very nice to let me ramble or rant about this type of stuff. But that's what we saw with our local, and apparently there were a couple other locals there too that haven't been as prominent because they didn't have as important positions in the community. But I'm waiting to hear back from some people who are aware of who they are. I'm not like claiming I'm just going to name people. Here are the names, but apparently it wasn't the only person from the area who made it out to Washington for January 6th.
Wow, I no, I greatly appreciate all of that because you're the guest. You're here
Hey,
to
thank you.
you're here to share the wealth of your knowledge with us. Um,
And I'm drinking this coffee, so I'm gonna.
that's yeah. I'm glad you're drinking it.
Yeah.
Uh, I love that you brought up Andy Caldwell. He's
Andy
got
Caldwell, listen, with today, dude, the day of the event he had on Joe Arpaio,
what?
was, yeah, no, that's who he had scheduled. Joe Arpaio has a book out. Joe
Uh-huh.
Arpaio, the proto-Trump, pardoned by Trump. Trump basically mainstreamed his cruel and unusual punishment
Mhm.
to immigrants from South America and refugees, right? Yeah, and Andy Caldwell, the day of the attack, was making the Antifa defense. We have some pictures of Antifa. We think Antifa's out here trying to give Trump a bad name. So they're so out beyond the pale.
Yeah.
The far right has gone so far to the level, in my opinion, of fascistic behavior, where you're going to have a far right attack on a governing body, the highest governing body, right? And what are you going to do? Let's blame it on the left wing. That's exactly the
Yep.
fascist playbook, right? And so to see that kind of stuff, and if you paid attention to, I mean, I watch a lot of political YouTube stuff. Caldwell's ads were real nuts. I mean, if you can go back to the Andy Caldwell for Congress YouTube page, hope he doesn't take him down. His ads were insane. I mean, just like, the only systemic racism black people face is abortions, like straight up, and it was just like, whoa, the globalists are coming for you in your jobs, and just like, whoa,
Wow.
wow, man. And and people have to realize that Andy Caldwell, he's has this lobbying firm. I don't know if it's a certain type of nonprofit, but it's called CoLab, the Coalition for Labor, Agriculture, and Business. I mean, putting the word labor in there is a joke. He is on the dole for the wealthiest interests, $1 billion industries in our county. We're talking big oil, big ag, and other very well-to-do business interests. And this is why Andy Caldwell just has nothing but time to go to public comment for every governing body around here, and have a radio show where he's talking to people like Joe Arpaio. I don't get that kind of support. I'm on YouTube just like everybody, scrambling to get 1,000 subs to get monetized. There isn't piles of money sitting around for progressives just to make media. But there's tons for the right wing, like Andy Caldwell, because it serves the interests of wealth.
For sure. And I had just have to say that your Andy Caldwell impression is absolutely spot on.
Thank you, sir. I try my best, but yeah,
So good.
I've been listening to him for years, and it's just it's crazy where people just take it for granted that not only do you have the whole national right wing media sphere, right, and
Mhm.
Rush Limbaugh and Michael Savage, and I grew up hearing a lot of that stuff, but then every borough throughout the country has its own little local version, and they tend to parrot the same party line on this stuff. and it's massively subsidized by wealthy interests and industry,
Yeah.
and and conservative interests. So it's fun to goof on them too. It's just fun. I like it.
No, it really is. And what kills me is when they'll say things like, "We're being silenced."
Of
No, you're
course. Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
everywhere.
The QAnon congresswoman from Georgia, Marjorie Taylor Greene, in front of Congress, she's in the House of Representatives, right? You can't be
Mhm.
any more platformed. I mean, there's only a couple platforms higher than that, literally a couple. And she's there, and her face mask says canceled, right? So that's and that's the other thing that exists on the right that people have to be aware of is it's a culture of aggrievement. They can be in control of the White House, both halls of Congress, and stack the Supreme Court, and there's still a war on Christmas, right? And there's still the Hollywood's against us, and all these other things are constantly victimized or self-victimizing themselves, which is weird because they project that anyone on the left, like, oh, you just want safe spaces, you have a culture of victimization. So why is it that that's the problem with the left? It's so weird that the projection is really is something, especially Trump saying the election's stolen, when we all heard or not all of us, but a lot of us heard the phone call of him with the Georgia Secretary of State going, "I just need you to find me 11,100 one more vote than I lost by. I just need you to
Yeah.
find these votes for me." Right? So I mean, that's the other thing, that's where, and when you come across people where they don't they're not as savvy, they don't pay attention to the news, they don't have, like, I mean, I realize that I am in very much in a minority because I have media experience, and then I'm just a voracious consumer of a lot of different news media, that I can see the bigger picture of this stuff. And normal people, just regular people who don't have that experience or media literacy, you just hear right wing like talking points enter the discourse,
Mhm.
like whether it's about taxes or immigration or just certain lies, like, oh well, why do the immigrants get all the benefits? No, they don't, and just like so many things. It's part of why I started my channel, and what I do is because you have so many one-on-one conversations with people, and you feel like I am doing so much work right now with this one brain to unravel like all these misconceptions and preconceived notions, that like, geez, like, I almost want to be able to tell people, I have a YouTube video of that. Let me just send you a link. So, so I don't have to, spend the time here, here and now, kind of outsource it a little bit, but, or, I don't know,
Yeah.
put it out there.
I do that with my podcast. Here's a link to an episode on that very topic.
Exactly. Exactly.
I feel like I'm using a lot of your time here. So
That's
as we
okay. I
wrap,
mean, I can go as long as you want to go.
oh,
I
perfect,
enjoy talking. So,
perfect. I don't want to keep you beyond the time I asked you
okay.
for, but so as we wrap up here,
Yeah,
let's look at the Biden administration here.
sure.
What has he done in the last few days? He's only been president. So what? This is his third full day.
Yeah, what's today? Saturday? Yeah, third full day. I went over a bunch of this on my live stream last night, Political Payne on YouTube and Twitch, at Political Payne. And most of it has been executive order. And, I mean, he really has done quite a bit that I think people like me, who he was not our first choice, it was Senator Bernard Sanders, who was our first choice. He's done some things that we should be happy about and give him some credit for. Of course, there's things he hasn't done yet that he kind of was saying he would, like canceling student loan debt, but reinstating DACA, right? Protecting the Dreamers again, ending the lease for the Keystone oil pipeline. There was collective bargaining for federal employees is returned. There were tons of things that Trump did. Like, it's funny because when people talk about the guardrails of democracy with Trump and how he butt up against them, a lot of it was, especially after he lost the House immediately in the first midterm, he in 2018, is he was just governing by executive order. Oh, the Muslim ban was undone. Like all these things that Trump I mean, and he would literally, a lot of these were penned by Steve Bannon, who is a white nationalist, ethno nationalist figure who even after he left the White House, a bunch of these executive orders were just lying around, things that he had written up. And so, Biden has undone a bunch of those. He's also just ramping up the coronavirus response, which, it's interesting. Like things like the Defense Authorization or the Defense Production Act or the Defense Authorization Act, like getting the government to spur production in the private sector because this was first happened during the Korean War, and it's like a wartime power, but we've lost more American citizens in the last year than all like the last 50 years of wars combined of military casualties, right? So kind of begs the question. It was just one of those things that under Trump it was like everybody was just saying, hey, you could do this, you could just make this happen. I mean, the PPE, the vaccines, all these other things. They did Operation Warp Speed, which did a lot of, which if we want to give Trump credit, it's not like I'm say orange man nothing but bad. They did throw a bunch of money at the pharmaceutical industry to get a vaccine produced, and was successful. But even then, they bungled the amount of the vaccine to have ready, want to go. So we're already behind in the amount of vaccinations we need to be doing. And so Biden has kicked in the Defense Authorization Act or Production Act, so that where we can streamline this, streamline testing, streamline all the things that could have happened months ago, right? I just got an envelope in the mail from Covered California of face masks. I don't know if you're going to see that or how many people are going to see that. But the post office had a plan months ago to send out face masks to literally every address in the United States, and Trump quashed on that, stepped on it. So, or his people did, to Joy. So that the so much of what Biden has to do right now is just undo the damage. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because here's another thing about Steve Bannon that I want everybody who hears my voice to understand. Like he went to CPAC, the Conservative Political Action Committee, just after Trump was elected, and he gave this speech and he said, "What are we doing? We're at war with the administrative state. We're going to dismantle the administrative state. That means all of the government, that the executive branch includes." It's all these agencies. Of course, they were interested in the EPA and industries, the FDA, that they wanted to deregulate industry, but that included the CDC and HHS, and that's part of what. And the pandemic response team that we had on the National Security Council. It's all part of why it got so out of control. And Joe Biden on October 25th, 2019 tweeted that, oh, look at all the things Trump has done to dismantle our pandemic response. We're not going to be ready for the next pandemic. He was right. I mean, he was absolutely right. And so not only is Biden going in to the government, and all the wires have been yanked out of the wall, and all the faucets have been left on, and they clogged the drains before they did that. They've done everything they possibly could to gum up government, because, and I don't think Trump is a outlier in Republicans. I think he is the logical outcome of this anti-government rhetoric that we've heard from the Republican Party, starting with Reagan. The worst thing you could ever hear is, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help," right? That was like one of Reagan's famous lines. And the way that the right and the Republicans, the GOP, have operated in this country is to say the government can't do anything, you know, and you weren't paying attention when they removed the funding, fired the experts, hobbled the government in every way, shot it in the kneecaps, beat on it with a lead pipe, and then went, "Look, the government just can't do anything right. We need the private sector to do it," and all of that stuff. So it's a bait and switch. It's been going on a long time. And so, Biden, and this is the thing, Biden's not doing anything like anything super hardcore lefty, Bernie Sanders at all. But
No.
it might appear like groundbreaking, crazy stuff after 4 years of Trump. So far it's all of that stuff. That there's jockeying going on in the Senate with what are they going to do about the filibuster, with a 50-50 split and a tie vote with Kamala Harris as VP. We're going to need budget reconciliation to pass things without the 60 votes, if we don't get filibuster reform. So that all remains to be seen. That's what's going to be interesting about this era is now you have all these people who were totally alarmed by Trump. They learned a bit more about how our government actually works. They're now paying attention. I do think plenty of people are going to go to sleep. I hope not a lot, but I think Trump was so alarming, and to really cap it all off with something as insane as an insurrection, an attack on the Capitol and on our duly elected leadership. I think that's enough of a shock that we now have more people, with their eyes open, paying attention. Yeah, we got to contend with the conspiracy theory and the far right and the extremism that existed before Trump, but now we have 80 million plus uh, voter coalition that is ready to. I mean that did what was considered very difficult, which is to flip Georgia and
Hmm.
a long time red state and Arizona, and so I think if the Democratic Party can deliver for people, if Joe Biden, I mean, and we should be concerned about, well, we're going to do $1,400 checks because you already got 600, even though I said 2,000. Like, come on, Joe, just as a Joe, from one Joe to another, please just push a little harder, cancel the student loan debt, not 10,000, do 50,000. Do
Yeah.
these things because they will make you popular. It's and Republicans are going to call it buying votes. They're going to call it socialism. They're going to call you communist. But they're going to do that no matter what. It didn't matter who it was. Even if they ran a Republican as a Democrat, someone who switched party and went over, still would have happened. So that's the way I see it. That's how I see. That's how I've assessed Biden so far. Again, this is
Yeah.
days into this thing.
I think you're right. I think that he has to, because of the fact that we're in a pandemic and people are feeling the financial pinch, that he has to act quickly and do things that will affect people's lives tangibly. And he
Yep.
has to do it quick. He
Yep.
can't wait until, midterms or later in his term. He has to do it now.
Absolutely, Jose. Absolutely. And that way, I think if by 2022, if the vaccine has, if we have like 200 million Americans have been vaccinated and, you don't have to wait in line to go into a grocery store. And maybe there will be, I think a lot of people are just going to wear masks for years to come, just out of a, just healthy concern and habit. You see that's the practice in certain populated areas where they deal with these viruses a lot, like in Beijing or in Tokyo. And I think yeah, I think if we have some return to normalcy by the time we get to 2022 and
Hmm.
people remember that they got $2,000 in direct into their bank account or whatever from Joe Biden, that he could get reelected if he seeks reelection. It's a lot of people, he's so old, and all that stuff, which that's not that's is what it is, and people will deal with it. But if again, like after 2 years, 4 years, whatever, who knows if there's Senator Ivanka Trump of Florida or whatever else. Yeah, I mean, this is all could happen. Or who knows what else. I am interested also to see what, if any, legal ramifications are Trump and his sphere going to face after all of this.
Hmm.
The rank corruption, the literal attack on our democracy. What comes of that, and that's the other thing is now we're going to have a post presidential impeachment, second impeachment. Like, this is all totally new water for the Congress, for the United States history. So we're going to have to see how that all plays out. The Republicans are already crying foul, like Joe Biden. He talked about unity in his inauguration, but he's not victimizing brown people the way that we were, and that's really divisive for us. And
Yeah.
he called out white supremacy as a bad thing. So divisive, Joe Biden. Which
Yeah.
and that's another thing. Like, I got to give props to Joe Biden for being probably the only American president to mention white supremacy. in an inauguration speech, at least in repudiation.
Mm.
If you go back
Yeah.
far enough, there might be some president who had the opposite standpoint on it, but mentioned it. So it's interesting. Joe Biden, yes, he's been a conservative Democrat a long time, but he also is kind of a guy who leans which way the wind is blowing, and to a certain degree, I think our own former Senator Kamala Harris, now Vice President, is a bit of the same way. When she entered the Senate, one of the first things she did was co-sponsor Medicare for all.
Mm.
And that as a reporter here who doing a little bit of political reporting, writing about that, I kind of leaned back in my desk and went, huh, I think this girl's banking for the White House. Like that was kind of a moment I realized she was up to something and had some plans, and I think that she, again, once she kind of felt out the primary, she backed away from it and she paid a political price for that. So who knows, when it's her turn to go to take a swing at it. I'm sure she's going to just shoot up in popularity. Corporate media is going to be following her, like they did Obama and Michelle Obama and all them. She's going to be very popular, and there's going to be and the other thing that bothers me is we were already seeing the fluff pieces. Joe Biden's watch, what kind of watch was he wearing? And
Oh.
Joe Biden rides a Peloton bike and all this crap. So
Mm.
um if Americans, people in this community in the Santa Maria Valley, people across the country, if you're disgusted by the simpering of corporate media, you have a journalist right here who feels that way with you. And so I'm going to have hopefully clear-eyed, clear-headed, and again, I make my politics clear. I'm of the progressive left. I don't hide that. But I will let you know what I think and how I am appraising things. And but I'm not, I'm trying, I one of the things I've tried to really do as much as possible is be less reactionary,
Mm.
because Trump turned us all into reactionaries in a way. And so, just having knee jerk, emotional reactions to every little thing. I get the impulse, but at the same time, and outrage is warranted, especially when you see something like January 6th. But we also need to be clear headed. And that's why, as someone on the progressive left, I can kind of look at some of Biden's things and go, they're good. Look at Joe doing, LGBTQ, protection for trans people, and in their workplaces. And, that's huge. Like basically expanding on the Supreme Court decision from last year over that. Like you got to give them some props for that, or at least say, okay, that's good. Like, what else can we get out of you, Joe? Like that's the way that's the way I
Yeah.
see it.
I think that's going to be what we're going to see over the next, uh, you know, 4 years. On the one hand, you'll have Republicans trying to figure out, their divisions, but I think on the left we'll see, you know, who is going to win out. Will it be maybe like the corporate neoliberal or maybe moderate Democrats, or will the more progressive left have a voice and have some muscle and get
Yeah.
by?
Well, the squad grew in 2020, their representation in the House. We now have newbies to the group like Corey Bush and Jamal Bowman, who have joined the now sophomore members of the squad: Ilhan Omar, AOC, Rashida Tlaib, Ayanna Presley. And so they are ascendant, right? They are growing. Um, I make it clear, like, if you want to engage in electoral politics, because there are tons of people on the left who are just like, electoralism will not save you, right? And so they don't even want to, they would rather throw stones at the squad than try to help swell their support. But I'm of the outlook that if you're going to engage in electoralism, then engage in electoralism. And what I want to do is grow the power of the left in the Democratic Party. We need more of the squad. We need the squad to grow. We need the progressive wing of the Democratic Party to grow, and I would like to see it eventually take over the party. So that somebody like a Bernie Sanders could win the primary. And there were a lot of reasons why he didn't. But in a lot of ways, I feel Bernie was leading us into a battle he kind of knew he wasn't going to win. He pretty much well knew it, especially in 2016, and he's just it's basically a call to,
Mhm.
and we've seen it inspire a new generation of progressives and people on the left who want new and different representation, and they want something else from politics, and so that is, I'm because yeah, the online left has, had a bunch of infighting ever since the election was over, about how do we do this and how do we do that, um, including like going after the squad and attacking them, hashtag fraud squad and all that stuff. And yeah, and I just see that as, you go, okay, let's shoot your movement in the foot, right, as it's actually gaining some steam. I'm not gonna do that. I'm actually gonna stand against that. And because so much of the Democratic Party that is in control right now, Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi, Dianne Feinstein, these are people that came up during the Reagan years. They're Reagan Democrats. So they are neoliberal, centrist, pro corporate, free market, deregulatory Democrats. And, you now have people like AOC, who, instead of going to the inauguration, she was busy buying burgers and water bottles for the Teamsters who are on strike in her district. So, to see young progressives returning to labor and returning to, progressive and kind of New Deal style policies, I think it's a good thing. And I'm on that team. I plant my flag on that, in that lane of the left, for sure.
Nice, and I'm glad to hear that. I didn't know she did that, but
Yeah,
yeah, I think if we do want to have like a more, I don't know what the word is. If you want to have a left that is more politically strong, I guess is the way to put it, we need on the ground organizing, hand in hand. It can't
absolutely.
just be like abstract sort of debates on Twitter or,
Yeah, yeah.
Facebook.
That's
We have to get on the ground
mhm.
with the people.
That's what won Georgia. That's what
Yeah,
won Georgia. I mean,
exactly.
it's and oh my gosh, I'm blanking on her name. The who
Oh yeah,
she
I'm
deserves.
blank.
Oh, this is terrible. I can't believe we're forgetting her name, but she ran for governor. Uh,
Stacey Abrams.
Stacey Abrams deserves tons of credit, but everybody just named Stacey Abrams, and that's why it's funny we both forgot her name for a second. But brain farted basically. That everybody will say Stacey Abrams deserves all that, but there were a bunch of grassroots left and much farther to the left than Stacey Abrams organizations that made that happen. I
Mhm.
went and followed a bunch of them on Twitter. There's like, it wasn't, it was a multiracial coalition that made Georgia happen. I saw people, responding to posts on Twitter to these organizations saying, like, I had never heard once a political ad in my native language, whether it was Spanish or Tagalog or Cantonese. There are all these different organizations that were reaching out
Yeah.
to these groups in Georgia that are just so often ignored. Their doors aren't knocked on. There's no ads for them, and that was not the case this time around. And they did what many thought was impossible. And of course Trump didn't help. But that was a great thing about it. But it can't be denied the on the ground organization, and that's why I'm happy to see the organizations we have in the Santa Maria Valley, but also these completely grassroots groups that are just starting this stuff up on their own.
Absolutely. So I thank you so much for joining me, Joe. That was an awesome conversation. I learned a lot
Thanks,
just sitting
Jose.
here with you. And
Jeez.
people, go check out Mr. Joe Payne over on YouTube at Political Payne,
Thank you.
Payne.
And Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, and you can visit politicalpain.com, and you can even give me a donation, support local journalism. But but I appreciate it, and thank you for doing what you're doing. I think it's really great to see people starting their own podcasts, having long form conversations. It's funny because in my live streams I get a little like deer in headlights, and you don't remember all the things you wanted to say when you're the only person on camera or on the mic. But then when you have someone to talk to and bounce ideas off of, you can get a real synergy going. And I you let me really go off here and pop off and get in a real lather a few times. So I appreciate that. It's a lot of fun. Sometimes you
Yeah.
think of things you didn't think of, or go down avenues that you might have not gone down on your own. So I appreciate you inviting me on your show.
Yeah, we'll have to have you on again when maybe midterms or before that point. But
Sure,
I
man.
love I love talking with people like you. You're awesome. Appreciate
All
it.
right. Thanks, Jose. It's good to finally talk with you. I've seen you around town and in the music scene and all that, and at the pub, as it were. And so it was good to put a name with the face and talk with you, talk some news and politics.
Yeah, likewise, man. Appreciate it.
Cool. Thanks.